Doing good. I'm just trying to see how these hurricanes are going to affect Louisiana. So that's just really what's been going on in my world.
Oh, God. Where are you at right now?
Well, I'm in California, but I live in Louisiana. So just been texting with my neighbors and family because like these hurricanes could like turn or, you have no clue. So right now it's supposed to hit Louisiana and Texas, which is where my family's at. So
your family's in Texas as well?
Yes.
Oh, shoot, man. Sorry to hear that. That's a lot of stress, huh? Mm-hmm. On top of everything else, too, it just feels like, can anything else be crumbling? There's like California wildfires. I know, right? It's like, what is going on, man? It's crazy.
Super crazy here.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And I am so excited to talk with you. I saw The Weight of Gold documentary that you were featured in, and your story was super compelling. Of course, I'd seen you compete in the Olympics before, so I knew of your story. And after seeing The Weight of Gold and hearing you talk a bit more, I just went down a wormhole on YouTube and watched like a million interviews of you. And I think your story is inspiring. The ups and downs are so interesting. And I'm hoping to just kind of get the general story of your journey. And then we can maybe go into some more specifics if that sounds good to you.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
So I wanted to start with your childhood. I had a pretty rough upbringing myself. My family was very, very low income, and we lived in a little box of a house. My mom was an extreme hoarder. And whenever I say that, people are always like, oh, my mom was a hoarder too. I'm like, no, I feel like your mom probably kept an extra scrapbook in the attic. That's not a hoarder. My mom was like, kept Easter eggs that we dyed 12 years earlier that were rotten in the back of the fridge and smelling up the whole house. And there was mold everywhere. It was just like a horrible setting. We didn't have beds. We slept on these foldable mats from Costco. That was sort of my upbringing. And because of that, I always relate to anybody else who has a rough upbringing. And hearing about yours was just wild to me. Can you kind of give the rundown of what that looked like when you were a kid?
Yeah, like growing up, my dad was in and out of prison my whole childhood. And, it was just my mom working 2 jobs, trying to take care of 5 kids. And, when he would be out of prison, he it's not like he was some deadbeat dad. Like he as well would have 2 jobs. It's just, he really just, he struggled. And once you're in the system, it's really like, as we're learning with the systematic racism, like any little thing started to get ticked off, So like he'll admit the first to his crimes. He's like, yeah, I messed up here. But then as I started to get older, like he would just go away for like small stuff, that was like, just small violations of parole that, if anyone who's seen like a criminal try to get his life back on track, it's the fact that, he had 2 jobs. Sorry, I have somebody at my door.
No,
I'm sorry, guys. I told them not to disturb me, but it's unfortunate. So hold on 1 second.
No,
yeah, they're going to be, I can't prevent them from knocking on my door because it's just part of the work I'm in right now. So
sure.
Yeah. So I apologize.
It gives a little flavor.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. So he would just, he would come back out of prison, get a job or 2, try to take care of the family. But he was just in and out of prison my whole childhood. That was just really me and my brothers just going to school and trying our best to like navigate the waters. Most of the times it just meant like, most of our holidays were spent at churches because churches would always give away the free meals, like the Thanksgiving dinners or the Christmas, like our Christmas presents would come from like churches or charities. I remember, going to school and getting like a free Barbie doll for Christmas. And that was one of the only presents I got for Christmas that year. So yeah, just like small things like that. But for me, it was normal as a kid because that was my childhood. Like I didn't know what it was like to be in a middle class family, and it wasn't until years later that I realized just how poor we were, like standing in line, the food pantries to get free cheese and milk and stuff like that. Like that, right. It was just something that was normal to me and my family.
How old were you when you started to realize maybe this isn't how most other people my age are living? Was that like adolescence for you?
Yeah, probably like middle school. But I remember at a young age being like very embarrassed with like the whole food stamp system.
Right.
So,
Right.
because that's back in the day, they had actually had like booklets of food stamps. So you'd have like fake $1 bills, fake $5, 10 and 20, and you'd have like these booklets. And I remember my mom would like send each of us into the store and I kind of try to get something really cheap to buy so that you would turn in like the food stamp dollar and you'd get real cash back. And so she was doing that so she could like, if collectively all of her kids, got the cash back, she could buy stuff like gas, which you can't buy with food stamps. So, but now they have the debit card system, which actually is better just because you don't have the embarrassment. Like I was always worried that my classmates would see me with this big, and it wasn't like even the same size as a dollar. It was like awkwardly big. Yeah. And they'd see me like checking out at a gas station. Yeah. So.
No, totally. I get that. So you were close with your dad, and how often were you seeing him? This was like every couple months type of thing, or how often?
Well, I don't remember. It's my childhood. So he would be home and then he'd be gone. It'd be like, he'd be here for like 6 to 8 months and then he would be gone for 2 years and then he'd be back for like a year and then gone. So I don't remember the specific details. I just remember like, it just got to the point where it was just natural. Like he would be home and then he wouldn't be home, so. Sure.
And then when did running come into your life and how?
Well, my dad actually was there's a few ways. Like I remember in elementary school, they had this kind of contest where kids could run a lap around the recess playground and they would get a check. And then the more checks you got, the more you could like pick a prize. And for anyone who doesn't get Christmas gifts or like really any kind of gifts, like for me, I would have done anything to get just something like, so I remember the kids all did it like the first day and then like, it was optional. You didn't have to do it. Like you could do the laps or you could just play recess. And like the more days that expired, the less and less kids were running the laps. And I was just like, running like, yeah. And I don't remember what my end prize was, but like it didn't bother me. I actually liked it. And then just challenging to see how many I could do. And then my dad, he's a big runner. And so he actually like a lot of the times when our car would break down, we'd run to the grocery store. So, and he would be like coaching me like, okay, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And like, just little things. Like I didn't have much father time. Like I don't remember doing a lot of things with my dad, but I do remember running with him because our car broke down. I mean, he was always buying these cheap cars because we were poor. And so they would always break down. So eventually, like if we were stuck somewhere, we wouldn't call a cab. Like we had no money to call a cab. So wherever we got stuck was basically where we were going to be running from to get back to the house. Or if like the car was broke down, we would, run to the grocery store. And it's like, it's just, I do remember running, with my dad a few times. So, but yeah, he was a big time runner but like not on a track team or anything. He always jokes like he was a big time runner because he likes to run away from the cops. So he was just being funny.
Facetious. Yeah, I get you. So then were you immediately pretty good at running? Were teachers coming up to you and saying like, wow, you've really got something, or was it a slower progression?
No, I don't really remember any teachers saying that. I played basketball too. I think that they thought I was more talented in that than running.
Interesting.
It's just, I think they could see I was athletic, but I don't think that they thought I would get a scholarship or go to the Olympics. I mean, I just probably like, for them, it's like, oh, she's, athletic. But I started off as a distance runner. My dad coached me in like distance because we were running quite long. And I'm a sprinter now. So I was completely doing something that I'm not like, I'm not a distance runner.
Yeah.
So, that's probably why they weren't able to see that I was a standout because I was doing a completely different event. I was solid, but I wasn't like, breaking any records, I guess. I was winning. I would be like top 3, but yeah.
Sure. Then how did you realize, oh, wait, maybe this isn't quite the best format for me to compete in?
That just happens in track. Like when you start competing in middle school and high school, most of the kids try out different events. Yeah, in middle school, I think I was running like 4 or 5 different events, which, and then as you get older and more elite, you can kind of figure out what you're good at. And so I remember in middle school, I was doing I would start off with the mile, and then I would do the high jump, the long jump, the longer hurdles, the 4x4. I mean, I was just exhausted because I was just doing the most random things. And then we removed the mile because I was better in the high jump and long jump, which are more sprinter power things. And then from there, you just start a process of elimination. Like, okay, what is she like getting top 3 in? And so it wasn't even till college where I purely focused just on the 100-meter hurdles.
And in the adolescent years, I feel like it's a really, especially if you have a rough upbringing, it's a really difficult time to weather. And I feel like a lot of people, it's really common to fall to alcohol or drugs or guys, whatever the distraction might be. Was that a challenge for you? Or do you think you were just so motivated by running that everything else kind of disappeared?
No, I think it was a little bit of both because, my dad kind of struggled with alcoholism. So I wasn't tempted by alcoholism because I had uncles who kind of struggled with it. So there was no temptation there for me in that vice. And then I wasn't really boy or guy crazy. I had 3 brothers. So
same.
Just being able to interact with them and see they kind of just treated me like one of the guys, which kept me in a tomboy stage for a very long time. And also just seeing them start to get girl crazy and kind of just how they were interacting with teenage girls kind of protected me some. And then really just my mom was never married. And, that's something she really wanted and it didn't happen for her. So seeing the heartbreak of that, I think that just kind of protected me from the teenage stages of falling for someone really quickly, because I could just see with my mom's life how relationships didn't work out and how painful it could be. So I think I was just guarded in those aspects. And as for the focus of running, it wasn't more of a focus. At first, it was just an outlet, I enjoyed playing sports. If your world is kind of not good home base, you don't really have that amazing of a food, your mom's working 2 jobs, pretty much it was just school and then, sitting at home, so sports really was just an outlet, a way for me to just have something kind of fun. And then as I started in middle school and high school, started to realize I had a talent for this, then it's oh, okay, well, maybe this can go somewhere further. Maybe I can get a scholarship.
And were you close with your mom?
Well, just close, but she's working a lot. She's tired. So I remember she would come home and she'd just be exhausted, just lay on the couch, not really able to move that much. Cause she'd be a secretary in the daytime and then a maid at hotels or so just really working a lot.
So then for the Olympics, what was the process competing wise that got you there? I'm not familiar with how that field works to get to the Olympics.
With the Olympics, only the top 3 in the USA will go on to represent Team USA.
Wow.
It's the hardest team in the world to make, and all the other countries know that because America is so deep in talent that usually we have about 10 people that should be at the Olympic Games, but they cap it at 3. And then other countries will have maybe 1 or 2 for each event, but they won't have 10. It's just really hard because when we go to the Olympic trials, we know we're leaving behind people that have better times, faster capabilities than some of the other countries. But that's the nature of the Olympics, is to have diversity from all over the world. They don't just do the top 10 fastest. It's okay, this country is going to have this amount of spots. This country is going to have this amount of spots. And then we're going to play ball, So,
wow.
So I don't think a lot of Americans know that though, because they, it's just, they know we qualify, but I don't think that they know the depth that Team USA has on a lot of the events.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, well, it's kind of if you look at basketball or NBA, mostly now it's starting to shift where, because NBA has done a really good job of recruiting other countries. But for the longest time, if you thought about the NBA, it was mostly dominant American players. And so that's why, when they would go to the Olympics, it would just be an easy gold medal. But now as they've the NBA is branching out, they're having teams in China and they're having teams all over and doing these camps. The talent has gotten better all throughout the world. Yeah. So, but equivalent to that, like that's how dominant USA track and field has been in a lot of the events was, equivalent to like the primetime NBA, for the Olympics.
Right. So was there a time that you tried for the Olympics and didn't make the team?
Yeah. So I went to compete at LSU for 4 years and I was good. I mean, I won NCAA titles in the mix, usually like top 3 in most of the races. And so I gave my first try was when I graduated my senior year, and I went out to the Olympic trials and I got 9th, which was the first person not to make the final, which means I wasn't even top 8 in the US. So I thought it was like, that was a wrap for my Olympic dreams. I was pretty devastated and crushed. And my coach was like, you're young, like, let's, he's like, I'll see you at practice next week. And for me, it was like everything had just ended in that moment. Like, I was a senior from college. Like, I just tried to make the Olympic team. It was over. I thought that was it. I had to go on and get like a real job. And so I haven't made Olympic teams when I was younger. And then I haven't made Olympic teams when I was older. Like I had one Olympic team where I was injured and I couldn't even go out to the Olympic trials. And then another one where I got 2 concussions for bobsled. And so I was really struggling that year with trying to come back from that. So, you see it a lot in these sports where, people will make a team and they don't make a team and then they come back. It's crazy. Or you'll see someone make 4 teams in a row.
Right. So when you didn't make it that first time, when you were the college senior, how long did that take you out for emotionally? Was it, did you go back to practice next week, or what? Did you say, no, I need to just take a break and put this on hold for a while?
No, I went back, but it wasn't easy. I was training, but because I didn't make the team, no one wanted me in races. And so eventually what happened is, a lot of our races are in Europe. And so the rest of that summer I trained and just was like waiting to go to Europe to race, and no one wanted me. So then I ended up just getting a job and just working a regular job. And then I had to restart that next season. And then the next season I was able to get some smaller races in like indoor track and field. And from there, I kind of just took off, like once they gave me my shot in Europe, I just took off, and every year got better. Like, I think my first year I was like in the 5th place through 8th place. And then second year pro, I was like 3rd through 5th. And then the year before, like 3rd in every race. And then the year of the 2008 Olympics, I was winning pretty much every race. So I definitely had a progression every year, just trying to get better and stronger and faster.
And was that just a natural athlete's progression, do you think, looking back on it now, of like, oh no, I was just getting better and that's what needed to happen? What was it then?
No. Well, I don't know. That was just my journey. I mean, I've seen some athletes come straight out of college and they do the reverse. Like, they'll make the team right out of college and then go to the Olympics, medal, and then never get back on that level again. Go start running races and they're 8th. And then they can't even get races. So I've seen the reverse happen where, an athlete will have a lot of success and then kind of die down. And then it's like a buildup. And then I've seen people, just make it out of nowhere. Like, they're kind of in the mix, and then all of a sudden they have a breakout year, the Olympic year. So it's really just on their individual journey.
Did you feel like having something to prove, in a sense, was a helpful motivator for you?
No, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove until I made a few other Olympic teams, because it wasn't until I started getting more popular and making teams where that's when I started to have haters and fans troll me. But my first Olympic team, no, there was no expectations. It was just me trying to go there and, do the best I can.
So then what's it like when you do make the Olympic team and then you have that, I'm assuming it's just this crazy media frenzy storm. How does that impact your training, your focus? Does it distract from anything, or do you find it helpful in motivating you?
I think it didn't bother me. Yeah, it didn't bother me the first Olympics because I was such a under the radar name.
Right.
You know, they weren't expecting me to make the team. They had no clue kind of who I was. So I didn't have a lot of media attention. Second Olympics, though, I had a huge amount of media because of what happened at the first Olympics. You know, I was winning the race and then I hit a hurdle and it cost me Olympic gold. And for some reason, it was in the fashion and the way they filmed it in my post race, like, I became like this media sensation overnight. And so for 2012, obviously that was my rebound Olympics. I had a lot of media attention, a lot of spotlight on, oh, is she going to fail again? You know, this and that. So definitely increased at that point.
Gotcha. So in 2008, what was the media story that they were running with?
Oh, in 2008, there was no media story. It was like, she's good. She just made the team. She's running the best times in the world. She might break the Olympic record, you know, but they weren't like, I wasn't Michael Phelps. I wasn't Allison Felix, you know, it was just like, she's good. She's in the mix. She's probably going to win an Olympic gold. And it wasn't until other Olympics where I really fully tasted the media hype. Right.
Gotcha. But after you hit the hurdle and that situation happened, then.
Oh yeah, it was everywhere.
Right. So then what was that story?
Yeah. Well, you know, at first it was pretty kind, you know, they were just like, oh, everybody felt bad for me. You know, I think most people in life can relate to being so close to a goal or a dream and then it's being ripped away. A lot of people know what it's like to fail. You know, not a lot of people know what it's like to win an Olympic gold medal. So when I hit that hurdle, I felt a lot of people could resonate with me. And it actually comforted me during that time because people were just giving me their support. But then as the weeks turned into months after the Olympics and like, you know, they're replaying it or there's, you know, just statements here and there, like it starts to build up in you. And I was personally reliving the experience a lot. I was having PTSD and I didn't even know an athlete or just a person could get that. I thought it was something only soldiers could get is PTSD. I didn't know you could actually get that from any traumatic experience, but I was personally dealing with my own issues after that Olympics and trying to navigate them on my own. But I really didn't get I didn't probably get most of the hate probably until like 2 years after the Olympics, and probably like London is really when the tide started to turn against me, like with the media, with the fan base, like, you know, that's when it started to really like anybody who didn't agree with like a tweet I said, they would pull up that picture and just say, they would be like, shut up, B, you can't even like win an Olympics. I'm just like, you guys know how hard it is to win an Olympics? So like it just, that picture and me hitting the hurdle was used as ammunition against me at any point, you know, so most people can know what it's like to experience trolls online or this and that. So.
Right. Wow. It's like it's a meme that you're just constantly like fed in your low moments. That's fucking really annoying. So this was 2008, your first Olympics.
Yes.
And after this, that situation happened, you're talking about this PTSD that you're having. That sounds like that was months later. I saw this interview where you said that the night of the event was actually quite peaceful for you.
Yeah, like right after I lost the Olympics, well, besides crying my eyes out, I was able to kind of regather, you know, I went back to my village and I just did some quiet time. I'm a Christian, so I just, you know, read my Bible for peace. And I felt like that kind of recentered me. And then there's a Canadian hurdler. She was in the race as well. And that's another misconception that we don't know the people we're racing against. We've traveled with them the whole year. So I knew a lot of my competitors, and she didn't run good either. And so she was just like, hey, let's go to like in the Olympic Village, they have like a rec area where you can kind of blow off steam. Yeah. So we went there and just like played like basketball. And I lost against her in that. And I was like, damn it, I can't even win this stupid arcade game, you know, like, so we were already like making jokes about it.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was handling it pretty good, but it, you know, when you go home and then the media is still talking about it, and then, you know, I'm still reliving the race. So that's where like the PTS started to like kind of build. So.
And what do you mean when you say that you're reliving it? How often was that happening? Was it like a weekly thing where you couldn't sleep, or you'd wake up from sleep? What did it look like?
I think originally it was definitely more than weekly. It was probably like multiple times per the day.
Oh my God.
And as time went on, it started to get more spaced out, So, but it'd definitely be like just random times. I gotta be washing my dishes, and then I'd just be paralyzed with fear. Or, just driving, and then the race would be replay, but like anybody's been in a car accident, it's like, it's something that happens very slowly. I mean, quickly, but in your mind, when you relive it, it's like a very slow process because you're reliving.
What was your process then? Did you go to therapy to get to the other side of it? Or was it all through faith? What do you attribute your growth and processing to?
Well, so I didn't even know like I had access to therapy, or we didn't have access to therapy really. Like we have sports psychs, but I mean, what I was dealing with was definitely bigger than like sports, because that's when like depression was starting to creep in, and it wasn't more of like me needing a sports psych to visualize a performance. It was like something traumatic had happened with me, and I was struggling with how to deal with it. I went to some Christian counselors, but then I think Christian counselors just had a hard time relating the Olympics to anything traumatic. For them, one of the experiences, the lady just thought the Olympics was fun. So she didn't really understand that the Olympics is my job, and that's how I get sponsorships. That's how I get my health insurance. Like, it's not...
She's just like, how cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and she actually ended up apologizing, but the damage was already done, because after that, I kind of shut down and didn't want to talk to anybody, because I was like, if they really just think the Olympics are fun, they're just going to think I'm bitching about nothing, but, and it's not even just her. Like, a lot of Americans will do that. If Olympians talk about, hey, we don't really get paid, or we don't have health insurance, people all the time will be like, shut up and get a real job. Like, and it's just like, this is our job. Like, this really is our job. Like, this is how we pay our rent. Like, this is how we pay our bills. So as much as people don't want to believe it, because they want to believe, and this is the propaganda that has been built up on the Olympics, as when it was created as an amateur sport, that's the propaganda that was like, oh, we are competing for Team USA, and trust we do it without a dime every Olympics. But it's also like, to train and prepare for the Olympics, that takes money. Like, if you had to take off time from your regular job to train completely, you need money to do that. So, and most jobs aren't going to allow you the proper time to train. So that's why most Olympians can't hold jobs down, because, some days are 12-hour days to get ready for the Olympics. Tell me how you can do that, a job. Like, it's one or the other. So you need the funding so that you can represent Team USA to the best of your abilities. And I don't know, that still gets like kind of lost on ears.
No, I totally get it. I think there's this thing with any occupation that's very romanticized or publicized in a big way. I definitely relate on the level of, I used to be an actor, and I felt very wary of going to therapy because I felt, I guess, some guilt around, I was dealing with a lot of abuse that was happening around me, to me, and to people around me, just naturally from being in the child acting world and the circumstances of that. It's just a wild world. And I felt like, well, nobody will understand, because it's just like, but you're so lucky, you get paid to act. Meanwhile, I didn't even want to do it. My mom put me in
that's
it.
The thing. Yeah, that's what they say. They're like, you get a gold medal. I'm like, that gold medal does not pay my rent, my food. I'm like, tell me what grocery store I can go to and say, hey, this is my Olympic medal. Like, can you check me out for free?
Totally. So I want to go kind of back to the 2008 Olympics, and what that was like for you when you were having this PTSD. Were you going back to that moment and thinking, what could I have done differently? Was there regret? And
well, I still regret. I mean, even now and then I'm like, why did you hit that hurdle? Like, why? Like, I never hit hurdles, and it's just like, I hit a hurdle. So I'm just like, you technically like relive everything you did in that race. Like, was it this angle? What could I have counterbalanced that way? Like, why the hell? You know, like you just like rip yourself apart trying to figure out like any little thing you could have done. And then as, you know, it goes on, it's just like the fear creeps in, like, oh my gosh, what if I never make an Olympic team again? What if I never medal again? I mean, what if that was my only shot, you know? So yeah, there's just so many things that are just thrown at you that you're trying to deal with mentally. And on top of that, not having people to talk to that understand, you know, that process, not just sports psych, and, you know, counselors that are diminishing it as just, you know, a fun Olympic Games experience, you know? So because for us, that Olympic medal, like that's something that changes your life forever. You know, like we have a saying that you're called, once you're an Olympian, you're always an Olympian. But the problem is most of the time when an Olympian retires, they say former Olympian, which you're never supposed to say. Once an Olympian, always an Olympian. But they never say that to someone who wins an Olympic medal. I don't know if you ever noticed, like if an Olympic athlete retires and he or she has a medal, they go Olympic silver medalist for the rest of their life. Right. But if you don't medal at the Olympics, you're now you're a former Olympic medalist. It's the crazy little things like that like mentally just mess with your head. Right. That you are like, okay, so if I don't get this medal, I'm basically going to be like crapped on the rest of my life, you know, like, you know, it's like, even if you think about it, like when people pass away, Olympic medalists, like that's on their tombstone. Yeah. You know, this one competition determines, you know, when you die and people are at your funeral, they're going to be like, and the 96th Olympic medalist, you know, like it's not just like there's a lot of weight to that. Can you imagine a job where it's just like, right. And the person who turned in the most papers in 1933 is, you know, that's on their tombstone. No, it doesn't happen. But for the Olympics, this is something, this little one race or competition you had at the Olympics is now repeated. It defines you. It's repeated. It's stated. Anytime you do a public speaking engagement, anytime people introduce you, it's just like, you know, how they call doctors. Instead of doctors, like, this is the Olympic champion, always. Like, even if they've been retired for 20 years. So, yeah, it's that one race carries a lot of weight. I try not to let it define me, but, you know, that's basically like what happens.
It's interesting to hear that there's still some regret there toward it. Do you actively do anything to work on that regret, or do you consider it now at this point just kind of something you have to live with and as just going to happen and this is just how it is?
I'm still working on it. You know, like it's hard because even as I've gone and competed in 3 other Olympic Games, it's still like that fear comes in you like, man, you're never going to be able to recover what you lost. You know, like you might not ever make another team. You might not medal. Like I've really had to do some like hard internal processing because that can rip me apart. I mean, I guess to relate it to somebody is like if they've ever really fallen in love with someone and they've wanted that relationship to work out so bad, but they don't know, they're in the in-between and they're like, man, I might not ever be with that person. I might not love again. Like that's kind of where I fluctuate sometimes with the Olympic medal. It's like, man, like that was my one shot at victory and I messed up. And, you know, like, will I ever be an Olympic medalist? Is my dream dead? You know, so that's kind of what I go through. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
yeah,
but one of my favorite movies is Cool Runnings, and it has a really good quote, and it says, if you're not good enough without the Olympic medal, you'll never be good enough with it. And for me, that's really, I resonate with that because I've seen a lot of Olympic medalists, either once they get the Olympic medal, they let that get to their head and they don't become nice people. Yeah, or I've met Olympic medalists that are really nice and say, it's still like it did nothing to validate them. Like they still felt very empty. So it's like either way. So what I try to tell myself is, you know, at the end of the day, like when I'm tucking my kids, I don't have kids now, but one day when I'm telling them their bedtime stories, if I never win this Olympic medal, I have to tell my kids, they're going to ask me why. And I've had to, over the years, this has taken a very long time, but it's like, yes, I didn't win an Olympic medal, but there is no stone I overlooked in this process. Like, I first didn't make a team, and then I overcame that and made a team, and then I messed up, and I was the only one from that Olympic team to go 4 years later and look that fear in the eye and run that race and, compete after messing up in front of millions. And then after I didn't medal there, I still didn't stop. And then I went and competed in a winter game. So my moral is, I don't have an Olympic medal to show, but I took every failure, every L, everything people considered a failure. And I not only looked it straight in the eye, I picked myself back up again and I tried again. So that brings me huge amount of comfort and peace. And so I think for anybody who is struggling with failing and like maybe they tried to have a business and the business went out of success, like just picking themselves back up is just sometimes more therapy than just sitting there wallowing. It's like, okay, what is my next move? Like, what am I doing next? How am I getting out of this rut? And then taking pride in the fact that you did not give up, because even though there's no medal for that, I mean, at the end of the day, if you know you did absolutely everything, it brings you a ton of peace knowing that you did everything to make your dream successful. And that even goes with like when we're having workouts, like I can back off on the workout and I can, when my coach is not looking, or I can run slower. But what brings me immense pride is knowing when I do these workouts, I am pouring myself out on that track and I don't leave anything, no percentages, no amount was wasted. And for some reason, that brings me a lot of peace and a lot of joy when circumstances are really bad.
That's so compelling. Yeah, I get what you mean too about like the medal will have different effects on people. Just not in the metal sense, but in the entertainment industry, if certain people just kind of explode and they're shallow, that might fulfill them because they don't have the depth to realize that that's not a fulfilling situation. And then sometimes if people might have some more morality or whatever you want to call it, depth to them, and then they become very successful, that's when they turn to alcoholism or some other vice because they realize how unfulfilled they are by having the fame and the fortune and the riches or whatever it might be. And I think it's super important to talk about how it's not about the medal. It's not about the award. It's not about the thing. There's so much more to the process of it and so much more to learn from the process of it. I'm really, really glad you brought it up.
Yeah, well, they always say it's not the medal, it's the journey. And I always joke, I said, the people who say that are usually the ones that have the medals. Because if your journey ends with no medal, but I mean, they are right in some aspect of that. It really is. If you can look back on your journey and see all the progress you've achieved, it does help. But yeah, it never lasts. The high, I've had very close teammates, and when they win, the high of winning that medal, it really never lasts. And that happens in life too, where people will achieve something that they never thought they could achieve. And then they're within like months, they're ready to like weeks, the next days. Thing. And it's not good enough. Like they need another, like it's not good enough. And that's good to an extent because it can help drive you. But at the same time, if it's too much, it can just really cripple you because you're always looking for like the next high, and it's never fulfilling.
With acting at like the height of my career, like I said, I didn't ever want to act in the first place. So it's a bit different in that there wasn't like that passion there underneath it. But when it was just like, I'm getting job offer after job offer, and it just felt, I'd be like, woohoo, cool, I got this new job. And then literally the next day, it'd be like, where's the next one? What's the next thing I'm going to do? What's the next thing? It was so short-lived and so unfulfilling because the work itself wasn't fulfilling to me, and then once I kind of transitioned and figured out something else that actually the process gave me, got me excited in a different way, was something that I was passionate about. That was when I started thinking like, oh, this is more in line with, I feel whole when I'm pursuing this thing. And yes, of course I want success in it, but the process of getting there is fulfilling in its own right. And that's interesting and unique and new for me, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to get into your transition into bobsled, because you're one of the very few Olympians who've gone to both the Winter and the Summer Olympics. And
there's 10 of us.
10?
Not that anybody's counting. There's thousands of Olympic medals, but there's only 10 of us.
I mean, that's insane. So you had your second Summer Olympics, and you had some sort of a back surgery, is that right? Right before you competed?
The back surgery, I had it. Was it before London? Yeah, it was before London. So I had spinal surgery. So they definitely were not counting me to make that team. And so I made the team. And not only did I make the team, I wasn't running the same times I was running in Beijing. Like Beijing, I went into Olympics as like world's number one. And then for London, I actually entered the Olympic trials as one of the slowest athletes. They were like, there's no way. They said like in articles, they're like, there's no way Lolo Jones is making this Olympic team. So it was just a nightmare because I was the bottom of the barrel and I made the team. And then I went on to the Olympics and still wasn't having like the best races. I was running solid, but not like the times I was running in 08, but I was still in the mix.
Gotcha.
And then in the final, I just remember like just having those fears of like, oh my gosh, if you hit the hurdle again, they're going to replay it everywhere. And like, so I really had a lot of mental things
Trauma.
I was dealing with.
Shoot.
Yeah. But we did it, man. Like I ran that race. I ran a season best and I got fourth.
It's amazing.
I got fourth, which I tell people I get fourth and like, that's the worst place to get at the Olympics because it's basically like I lived 08 again because I was proud of the fourth place because I knew what I went through to get there. One, I had the spinal surgery a year out. So basically while my competitors were running, I was trying to walk again. And then two, I knew in 08, I hit that hurdle and I had to deal with those flashbacks on the start line and no one else had to deal with that. I was the only hurdler that had to deal with hitting a hurdle on a main stage, come back. And I knew the cameras were all in my face because of that. I knew that they were replaying that. And so I looked that fear in the eye and I ran a clean, smooth race. And not only that, I ran a season best, which means I ran my fastest race that year at the Olympics. And then third, it was the fastest Olympic race in history, which means like overall, which means my time would have got me an Olympic medal at any Olympics to this date. But that Olympics, that's the only Olympics a hurdler could run that time and not medal. So it was like, it's not a stat I wanted, but it's just like, I knew everything that went into that race and immediately leaving the village. Then it's just like, everybody came down on me. They were like, she's a failure. She got fourth. She should give up all her sponsorships. She's a flop again. And I'm like, how is fourth place a failure? Like I'm fourth in the world. Like if you look at NBA players, NFL players, and you look at the fourth best on any like NFL player, NBA player, they would not be considered a flop. But you get fourth at the Olympics.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you get fourth at the Olympics and it's just like, you are a disgrace. And I'm just like, how? And so once I started getting all the troll messages on my Twitter and like the media started to just really, that's when the media was really against me. So they just ripped me apart and my teammates didn't help. You know, the two girls that won Olympic medals were pretty frustrated because I was still getting attention and they were like, hey, I just won my medal. Why are we not talking about me? And so they took it as me, like I was in control of the media. And I'm like, I don't have control over what they write, you know? It just became this huge division. It was very frustrating because originally I was proud of the fourth place. And then it's just like people just completely destroyed me. And so how I got into bobsled, that's how I got into bobsled, because at that point I was so frustrated because I had done everything I could do in track and it still wasn't good enough. The media frenzy was too much on me. So I just wanted to escape. Like after that Olympics, I didn't even know if I wanted to run again. And I sat on my couch for like a month in just depression. I don't know, maybe Cool Runnings played, I don't know. But then I was like, all right, I'm just going to go try a new sport. There's going to be no pressure on me because I'm not a bobsled athlete. I don't know what I'm doing. I can kind of hide out. Bobsled's not a sport that people really pay attention to. It's not like tennis or it's not a mainstay sport. Like there's way less people that watch their competition. So I felt like I just could go there, hide out and just be an athlete and enjoy what I enjoyed doing as a kid, just competing, you know?
So then what was the process like to get on the bobsled team? I imagine that was equally as difficult in different ways.
It was different in a different way. I always tell people to make a team for the Summer Olympics, the process is, you know, it's like, would you rather die by a gunshot bullet or would you rather be stabbed 1,000,000 times? And I say that because at the Olympic trials for Summer Olympics, you have one race. And if you don't get top 3, you know immediately that you're not on the team. And then you begin the process to mourn. So it's like a quick gunshot wound.
Right.
The race happens, you mourn, people cry, people are crying everywhere, and then you move on. Well, if you don't make a bobsled team, there's not one race that determines if you're on the team or not. It's a 5 or 6 month process. Every little thing you do can be counted against you.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's like, you know, gymnastics where everything is like point system. So like if I didn't get along with a girl, that's one little stab wound here. Or if, you know, you don't do this right, it's another little cut. It's so the process of making a bobsled team is not as it's because it's a longer. I say it's definitely harder on you mentally because it's so drawn out. It's a pressure cooker, and you're traveling with the other girls that you're actually trying to compete with for the same Olympic spot. And in track and field, you don't see your competitors really until the Olympic trials. So I can stay at home, I can just gear up, I can train like Rocky. Yeah. And then I go race. But in bobsled, you actually travel with the people you're competing against. So it can be quite catty. The tensions can definitely be extremely high in bobsled.
But then you made the first team that you tried out for?
I did, but not without stress. Because the problem is I was coming from the Summer Olympics. So some of the bobsled female athletes were very frustrated with that. You know, it's like, hey, I'm coming into their territory. You already competed in summer, like, let us have the winner. So that's kind of like the vibe I got. And I just tried to be a good teammate, but it didn't matter kind of what I did. It was their turf. And then some of the guys didn't like the fact that I had so much media attention from the summer games. So that was kind of used against me. So it was just a really rough transition into bobsled. But what I liked about it is the fact that it was still an escape from track. Like, it was just still, I was able to just really, bobsled's more manual labor. So it's long days and, you know, it's just a very humbling sport. And I needed that because, I was able to go back to track and be more grateful for some of the things that I was overlooking.
Was there a part of you that contemplated doing something completely outside of sport? You know, well, I'll go to business school or whatever it might be.
Well, no, not at the time, because I mean, I really do love competing, and, you know, so, and I know I can only be an athlete for so long and I can move into other ventures, but I know as an athlete, you have a very limited amount of years to compete. So I just wanted to soak that all up while I can, because every vet will always tell you, enjoy it while it lasts, because it's gone sooner than you know. And sure enough, I mean, even when I was competing in my early 30s, I was just like, man, I feel like I'm still like a rookie on the scene, but I'm not. At that point, I've been in the game for, 10 years, and I still feel like I was a rookie because the time flies.
And you mentioned you had 2 concussions for bobsled. Was this during the same Olympics or Olympic trials, or when did those happen?
Yeah, this happened on the last Olympic cycle. So for the Korea Games, I had 2 concussions, but yeah, pretty back to back, like within like a month and a half or so. So yeah, it was definitely pretty intense because I was forgetting words. I was,
oh my God,
it was the first time I was like really struggling with my thought process. So that was quite scary because I normally feel very sharp mentally. So, but I was able to do rehab, and there's a lot of things they can do for concussion protocols nowadays that can really help you clear up concussion symptoms. And, yeah. So, and then after that bobsled season, I had pretty much a year or two off because I moved back to track. So my brain wasn't even back in a bobsled for, it hasn't been back in a bobsled since,
Since then? Oh, okay. So it's been a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm fine. I could have gone back into a bobsled like a year ago, but I've just been focused on track and the Summer Olympics until they were, postponed.
Swept to the side. Yeah. So that's kind of where your focus is now is back on track.
Well, I don't know where it's at because they don't know what's going on. There's still a 50-50 chance the Olympics will even happen next year for summer. And for me, I just don't, that was going to be this year was going to be my last Summer Olympics for sure. And so I just don't want my last Olympic attempt to be taken away from me.
Yeah.
So I've had talks with the bobsled coach about returning. And because it just seems like with coronavirus, they need more time.
Yeah.
So 2022 looks like a better year than, next year. So.
Interesting. We are almost out of time, but if it's all right with you, I'd love to just circle back to the PTSD regret territory for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Great. So were you ever able to find an appropriate therapist or whatever it might be that helped you? Do you have tools now that you're able to use that are valuable for you? Or is this just something you've had to white knuckle through the years?
I've pretty much been white knuckling it through the years, and it's to the point where my brain is like really crying out for help. With the HBO documentary helped out a ton, where all the Olympic athletes kind of expressed how we're left to navigate this on our own. And immediately after that documentary, I was reached out to by the Olympic Training Center to say they're going to try to find me someone and they cover it. But for me, it's just like, where were you guys years ago,
Right.
So that's the frustrating part because, it's just very frustrating that there's just no benefits provided for us in that aspect unless you're like a current top ranked athlete. So the moment you lose your ranking, which can happen if you have, let's say you go to practice and you hurt your knee and you can't compete, you're going to lose your rankings probably in the next year. So which means once you lose your rankings, you lose your health insurance. Once you lose your health insurance, you have no way to even talk to someone. So it's all out of pocket. And for someone who we don't already get paid by the Olympics, if you're trying to make an Olympic team, what are you going to do first? If you have a decision between paying out of pocket for your mental health or paying out of pocket to get your body ready for a competition, 99% of the athletes are just going to pay to get their body ready for a competition. So.
That documentary was so crazy to me. I had no idea the circumstances that you guys deal with on that level. I think it is so easy to assume, well, they're Olympic fucking athletes. Like, of course, they've got everything at their fingertips, the means to deal with whatever might come their way. And then hearing each of your individual stories, it was just mind-blowing. I hope anybody listening checks out the documentary because it's really quite interesting.
Yeah. Gracie Gold said it really good. She was just like, well, if you get injured, you have access to the best, surgeon in the world, which is true. Like all of my surgeries I've had all taken care of by the Olympic, well, two of them all taken care of by the Olympic Training Center, like top surgeons. People that I would have no access to unless I was an Olympic athlete. But when you start talking about therapists and their mental health, it's just like, we can find you someone locally. And like, do they know how to deal with an athlete? Because, when I tried the Christian counselor, they had no clue. They were just like, oh, the Olympics is fun.
Yippee! Yeah, totally.
But they don't even know like the little things, how, when I didn't make the Olympic team because of concussions, a month later, I was dropped from my United States health insurance. And I was just like, okay, so let me get this right. I just tried to make Team USA. It was a close battle. I had 2 concussions because the pilots crashed me. And not only am I not making this team now, you guys are cutting me because I didn't make the team. But I didn't make the team because concussions they gave me. So I was just like, okay, so this doesn't really make sense to me right now.
Yeah. What a headache, dear God. Then how do you feel like you have learned from your regrets? Or what do you feel like you've learned from your regrets?
Well, I don't have like a general overall theme, there's no like Full House moment, where they talk to the kids, like they do something bad and it's like
Luckily,
they start
those
playing
moments
music.
are never good. Yeah.
I don't have that. I will learn something from like the experience that will help me just a little bit for the next. Or if it was a hurdle race I messed up on, I try to be like, okay, we'll fix this. And if it's not a technical thing, it's like, okay, we'll be grateful. So in '08, I was definitely like, yes, this sucks. You just hit a hurdle and you might not ever make an Olympic team again, but you're at least at the Olympics. Like 4 years ago, you were sitting at home crying because you couldn't make a team. So in that moment, I learned to be grateful. And in London, I would say that I just learned that, when everything was pressing me down, I was going to try to find a way to just get out, like get up, get out. And that's when I tried a whole new sport, because it's just like you're beating your head against the wall. You've reached a dead end. Okay, how do I get out of this scenario? How do I get my, mojo back? How do I get my mental health back up? So for me, that's what I learned from that experience. So there's not a general overall thing. I just try to apply it to in the moment.
And then finally, I feel like I very much relate with your thoughts, what we were saying earlier about not making it about the medal and in that sort of area. When I decided I need to quit acting, I've been doing this thing that I didn't want to do for 20 years. My mom put me in it as a kid. I want to figure out what I want to do with my life. And I transitioned and I'm now writing and directing things. I had very clear goals and milestones that I wanted to reach. And I broke it down very clearly. I want to have this opportunity in 2 years and this in 3 years and this in 4 years. None of those things have happened. Different opportunities have come around. Things that I couldn't have predicted have happened, which is great. But none of the things that I set my sight on, that I used to drive me toward my goals, none of those things have come to fruition. And it is something that I grapple with of like, well, to your point, when do I let the dream die? How do I know to keep pursuing this versus, why don't I just hang up the coat and call it a day?
For me, I struggle with that same thing until kind of recently, because I am on the tail end of my career. And it's like, why did I start this dream? I started this dream out of passion. I loved it. It was an escape. I enjoyed it. But the longer you go, the more frustrations you have, the injuries, it kind of takes away from that. But you still enjoy it, but just maybe not as much. And for me, other things started to really pique my interest, and I became passionate about other things. And so I was like, oh, okay, like there is life outside of track. So I'd say for whoever is just like at that kind of crossroads, just be on your radar. Like, what are some other things that are kind of like taking up some more of your time that you enjoy doing, that you are energized thinking about? And then I think it makes the transition a lot easier when you have that. When there's no other kind of outlet or hobby or passion, that's when people will struggle to give up the dream. So for me, I was actually at peace with ending my career a few years ago, because I've done so much in the sport. I've broken records. I don't have an Olympic medal, but I've had a really impressive career. So I started just, doing other stuff. And I was doing it all throughout my career. I think some of the blessings getting injured as an athlete is I had years off. And in those years, I started working on sports commentating and like behind the camera and just like helping bring other athlete stories out. And I found that actually was something I was very passionate about, because I've seen how my story had gotten out in a good way and also gotten out in a bad way. So I just became passionate about that. And, so even when I thought I wasn't going to compete as an athlete anymore, I had like an avenue I wanted to go into and kind of work more behind the scenes and do that. And so, yeah, I'm prepared for however it ends as an athlete. I'm at the point now where I'm just like, I was one of the athletes. I was like, come on, I got to wait another year to end this thing. Like, I'm ready to end this thing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Lolo. It's been so fun talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate it. And thank you again for, getting the word out. And I hope a lot of people enjoy learning about the Olympic experience.